So you think this woke mind virus that the right refers to is a problem, but not a big problem?
No. So the right wing drives me crazy. So look, guys, your instincts of populism is correct. Your instincts of anti-corruption is correct, right? And I love you for it. And so, and in a lot of ways, the right wing voters figured out the whole system's screwed before left wing voters did. Now, I shouldn't say left wing voters because progressives and left wing have been saying it for not only decades, but maybe centuries,
Yeah.
right? But Democratic voters, a lot of Democratic voters, some of them actually like this current system. Some of them, a lot of them have been tricked into liking this current system. And the left should be fighting against corruption harder than the right. But right now, unfortunately, that's not the case. So there's a lot that I like about right-wing voters, okay? But you guys get tricked on social issues so easily, right? So how many people are involved in trans high school sports, and a girl who should have finished first in that track race in the middle of Indiana finished second? First of all, this is the big crime. And how many people are involved? About 13 out of a country of 330 million people. And you can't see that that's a distraction, right? So, and everything they did that is like bait that the right-wing media puts out there, they run after. I mean, Tucker Carlson doing insane segments about M&M's should be sexier. Mr. Potato Head has gender issues. Guys, get out of there. Get out of there. It's a trap. Okay.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that there absolutely. It doesn't mean that there's larger scale issues with things like DEI that aren't so fun to talk about or viral to talk about on an anecdotal scale. There is DI does create a culture of fear with cancel culture, and it does create a kind of culture that limits the freedom of expression, and it does limit the meritocracy in another way. So you're basically saying, forget all these other problems. Money is the biggest problem.
So, first of all, on AOC, as an example, and I don't mean to pick on her, but she won through the great work of her and Shoykat Chakrabarti and Corbin Trent and others who were leaders of the Justice Democrats that went and helped her campaign. They were critical help. And we all told her the same thing. So it's not about me, me, me. And so we all said, you've got to challenge the establishment and you've got to work on money in politics first. Because if you don't work on money in politics and you don't fix that, you're going to lose on almost all other issues. But she didn't believe us because it's uncomfortable. And all the progressives that went into Congress, they drive me crazy. They think, oh, no, you're exaggerating. No, these are, and the minute they get in, all of a sudden, my colleagues, right? Your colleagues hate you and they're going to drive you out. You're a sucker. And Jamal Bowman, Cori Bush, what did they do? They drove them out. Marie Newman drove them out, right? And because they're not on your side, they're not your colleagues. And what happened to $15 minimum wage? And I remember talking to one of those Congress people, I won't leave out the name, and saying, hey, they're not going to do $15 minimum wage. And he's like, oh, Cenk, you're out of the loop. Nancy Pelosi assured us that they are going to do $15 minimum wage. I'm like, I love you, but you're totally wrong. Moneyed interests are not going to do $15 minimum wage. You have to start fighting now, right? And they didn't get it. So they lost on almost all those issues because it's all about incentives and disincentives and rules. If you don't fix the rules, you're going to constantly run into the same brick wall. Now, the second issue that we were talking about is in the culture wars. The rest of us are stuck between the two extreme 2%ers, right, on both sides. So the 2%er on the left goes, if you're a white woman, you need to shut up and listen now, okay? That's ridiculous. No, you don't. If you're a white woman, you have every right to speak out. You have every right that every other human being has. And so would I love for all of us to listen to one another, to have empathy for one another and go, hey, I wonder how a right-winger thinks about this. I wonder how a left-winger thinks about this. I wonder why they think that way, right? I love that and I want that. So I want you to listen, but I don't want you to shut up. So that 2% gets extreme and I don't like it. But on the right wing, you got your 2% who think that that's all that's happening on the left. And that's all that's happening in American politics. And they think the entire left believes that tiny 2%, right? And so they hate the left. And they're like, oh, I'm not going to shut up. I'm not going to wear a mask. I'm not going to do any of these things. And I'm not going to do any. That's a freedom. And then a Republican comes along and goes, oh, yeah, that thing you call freedom, that's deregulation for corporations, because you shouldn't really have freedom. Companies should have freedom, right? And then the guy goes, yeah, freedom for ExxonMobil. No, brother, they tricked you.
Yeah, the 2% on each side is a useful distraction for the corruption of the politicians via money. Still, I'm talking about the 96% that remains in the middle and the impact that DEI policies has on them.
So here's where it gets absurd. I'll give you a good example of absurdity. So, in a school, I believe in California, they noticed that Latino students were not doing as well in AP and honors classes. So they canceled AP and honors classes. Yeah. Oh, come on. What are you doing? That's nuts. No, your job is to help them get better grades, get better opportunity, etc. That's the harder thing to do and the right thing to do. Your job isn't, I'm going to make everything equal by taking away the opportunity for higher achievement for other students. If that's what you're doing and you think you're on the left, you're not really on the left. I actually think that's like an authoritarian position that no progressive in their right mind would be in favor of. So, but it's all definitional. So here's another example of definitional: communism. Like they say, oh my God, Kamala Harris is a communist. Well, when you're telling on yourself, brothers and sisters, when you say that, that means A, I don't know what communism means. And B, I don't have any idea what's going on in American politics. Kamala Harris is a corporatist. That's her problem. Not that she's a communist. She's on the other end of the spectrum, right? The idea that Kamala Harris would come into office and say, that's it, there's no more private property. We're going to take all of your homes and it's now government property, all your cars, etc. She was not going to get within 1 billion miles of that. Her donors would never allow her to get within 1 billion miles of that. That is so preposterous that when you say something like that, it's disqualifying. Like, I can't debate someone who thinks that Democrats are communists when they're actually largely corporatists. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So let's go there. So when people call her a communist, they're usually referring to certain kinds of policies. So do you think? I mean, I think it's a ridiculous label to assign to Kamala Harris, especially given the history of communism in the 20th century and what those economic and political policies have led to, the scale of suffering that led to. And it just degrades the meaning of the word, right? But to take that seriously, why is she not a communist? So you said she's not a communist because she's a corporatist. Okay. But that can't be. Okay, everybody in politics is a corporate. Almost everybody in politics is a corporate. But that doesn't mean the corporations have completely bought their mind. They have an influence on their mind on issues that matter to those corporations.
Yep.
Right? Like, outside of that, they're still thinking for the voters because they still have to win the votes.
Barely.
Okay.
So here, let me give you examples so you see what I'm saying. So if you just wanted votes, you would do a lot of what Tim Walz did, okay? And by the way, a lot of what Bernie did, that's why Bernie, who had no media coverage, went from like 2% in 2015 to by the end about 48%, because he was just doing things that were popular, right? And that American people wanted, et cetera, right? Because he's not controlled by corporations. By the way, neither is Tom Massey on the right-wing side, on the Republican side, right? So it's not all, that's why I always say almost all, right? So if you're doing things that are popular, people love it. So today, what would Kamala Harris do if she actually just wanted to win, right? So number one, she would try to pass paid family leave right now. Why? It polls at 84%, and even 74% of Republicans want it. Why? Because it says, hey, when you have a baby, you should get 12 weeks off. Bond with your baby. Right now, in a lot of states that don't have paid family leave, you have to go back to work the very next day, or you have to use all of your sick days, all your vacation days, just to have 1 or 2 weeks with your baby, right? So conservatives love paid family leave. Liberals love paid family leave. That's why it polls so high. So why isn't she proposing it? It's not in our economic plan. Tim Walz already passed it in Minnesota. He showed how easy it was. If you want votes, And then you know what's going to happen if you propose paid family leave? The Republicans are going to go, no, our beloved corporations don't want to spend another dollar on moms, right? And they fall for that trap. And then you're in an infinitely better shape. So why doesn't she do it? She doesn't do it because her corporate donors don't want her to do it. $15 minimum wage, layup. Over 2/3 of the country wants it because it not only gives you higher wages for minimum wage folks, but it pushes wages up for others. And what do the elites say? Oh, that's going to drive up inflation. Oh, you shouldn't get paid anymore. Wait, hold on. So you're saying all the other prices should go up, but the only thing that shouldn't go up is our wages? No, our wages should go up. Okay. So these are all easy ones. Here's another one, anti-corruption. Why isn't she running on getting money out of politics? It polls at over 90%. Why isn't Trump running on it anymore? He won when he ran on it in 2016. He didn't mean a word of it, but he ran on it. It was smart. They don't do it because their corporate donors take their heads off if they do it.
So in contradiction to that, why did she propose to raise the corporate tax rate from whatever 21% to 28%?
Because that's easy, because that is something that's super popular, and she's not going to do it. That's why. So guys, this is where I break the hearts of Blue MAGA. Blue MAGA thinks, oh my God, these Democrats, they're angels, and the right wingers and the Republicans are evil, and they work for big business, but not Kamala Harris, not Joe Biden, right? Okay, well, Donald Trump took the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. So that's trillions of dollars that got transferred. Because guys, you got to understand, if the corporations don't pay it, we have to pay it, because we're running up these giant deficits, and eventually either they're going to, not eventually, they keep raising our taxes in different ways that you're not noticing. They keep increasing fees and fines and different ways for the government to collect money. So we're paying for it. And on top of that, eventually they're going to cut your Social Security and Medicare, because they're going to say, oh, we don't have any options left anymore. Yeah, you don't have any options left anymore because you kept giving trillions of dollars in tax cuts to corporations. So we're going to have to pay for that. So then Biden says, oh my God, I'm going to bring corporate taxes back up to 28%. I'm like, wait, hold on. They were at 35. You already did a sleight of hand and said 28. Okay. Then he gets into office and Manchin says, no, 25. That's the highest I'll go. And he goes, okay, fine, 25. And then while you're not looking, they just dump it. They don't even do 25. It's still at 21. So hear me now, quote me later. I do predictions on the show all the time, because you should hold me accountable. You should hold all your pundits accountable. Yeah. If you held all your pundits accountable, we'd be the last man standing, and that's kind of what happened. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I guarantee you she will not increase corporate taxes.
So would the same be the case for price controls or the anti-price gouging that she's proposing?
So it's not price controls, it's anti-price gouging.
It is price controls, but I mean, minimum wages price controls also.
Now we're going to get into a lot of minutia, but I'll try to keep it broad. So price controls are a disaster. They never work. If you say, oh, here's a banana, it has to stay at $1 a pound, make up a number, right? Well, supply and demand is going to move. And then and so the minute it moves to $2 where the price should be, then you're going to run into shortages. So we all know this. It's a bad idea, right? But are there laws against price gouging? There already are, and they're a good idea. So why? Like, you have a natural disaster, all of a sudden the water that was $1, now they're charging $100. The government has to come in, democratic capitalism. They come in and go, no, I'm going to protect the people. So you're not allowed to price gouge. You know, maybe charge $2, etc., but you're not going to charge $100. But it is temporary. We get that done. We end the problem there, and then we bring it back to a normal supply and demand. Okay, so that's what she's proposing. That's all political, because the price gouging has already passed. They did it in 21 and 22, and so now the grocery stores are actually a low margin business. She says grocery stores. That's how I know she doesn't mean it, because the grocery stores weren't the problem. Consumer goods were the problem. Yeah. Those companies.
She's following the polls where most people will say that the groceries are too expensive. So she's just basically saying the most popular thing. Yeah.
100%. And you could tell in which proposals she means it and which proposals she doesn't, because of the framing, right? So this is a mediocre example, but in housing, she said, we have to stop private equity from buying houses in bulk. I'm like, curious that they put the word in bulk there. why does it have to be in bulk? Why don't we just stop them from buying any residential home? Like, you could set up normal boundaries, right? For example, Charlie Kirk was on the Young Turks this week.
By the way, sorry to take that tangent. I really enjoyed that conversation. I really enjoyed that you talked to. That was like civil. You guys disagreed pretty intensely, but like there was a lot of respect. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you, brother.
That was beautiful. Yeah, you and Charlie Kirk, and I think Anna was there.
Yeah, that's right. So
It's nice.
yeah, quick tangent. And look, I've done a lot of yelling online. Okay, and I yell when there's a issue that you should be passionate about. 40,000 people, 25,000 women and children slaughtered in Gaza. If you're not emotionally upset by that and you think it's no big deal, I think that's a problem. But when you add gaslighting on top, that's what drives me crazy. And then when you add filibustering on top, then that sets me off. So for all my life, right wing has gone on cable and filibustered. They take up so much more time than the left wing guest. And the left wing guest always like goes, oh, okay, well, I'm offended. He's taking up too much time. No, brother, go over the top. Go over the top. You're not going to talk over me. I'm going to talk over you. Okay. So, and then when you gaslight and you go, oh no, 1,200 people in Israel being killed is awful, which it is. But 40,000 people being killed in Gaza is no big deal. We should keep giving them money, keep killing. And that's normal. No, it's not normal. I'm not going to let you say it's normal. That's nuts. Okay. When you, like, we were against the Iraq war. There was only 2 shows that were on the air nationally that were against the Iraq war, Us and Democracy Now! With Amy Goodman. And at the time, I used to yell all the time because mainstream media would gaslight the fuck out of us. We're going to be greeted as liberators. Me and Ben Mankiewicz on the air. Ben doesn't yell as much. He's now the host of Turner Classic Movies. But he's saying it in a calm way. I'm saying it in a screaming way. We're not going to be greeted as liberators. When you drop a bomb on someone's head, they don't greet you as a liberator. Stop saying insane things. And 7 out of 10 Americans thought that Saddam Hussein had personally attacked us on 9/11. We got lied into that war by corporate media. Okay. Now there's a couple of good things that Trump has done. One is get people to realize corporate media is the matrix, right? And so now, and get them to an anti-war position. He himself doesn't have an anti-war position, but his voters do, and that's a positive. We can come back to that. But these days, the reason why the Charlie Kirk conversations are going great, and Rudy Giuliani and Mike Lindell, and historically, though, go back again, 10 years, 20 years, we've always been respectful when someone comes on our show and we have a debate. As long as they're not yelling, I match the tenor of the host, right? You and I are having a reasonable conversation. I'm not raising my voice. I'm not yelling at you for no reason, right? So now when Charlie's not going to battle anymore for like talking points, I'm shutting off my mind. All I'm doing is yelling at you. Then I'm going to yell back at him. But now he's saying, okay, let's have a reasonable conversation. Great. I love it. I love reasonable conversations.
It was great. It was refreshing. And what were we talking about? You buying up housing.
Yes. So Charlie, when he was on, said, hey, listen, I think that there should be a cap, though. I forget if he said 10 billion or 100 billion in assets. If you have less than that, you should still be able to do real estate as an investment, even if it's residential. But above that, it gets to, okay, that's good. No problem. We can have a debate about that. And we can figure out is the right number 10, 100, 25, no problem. You could put in reasonable limitations. But we got to get them to stop buying the homes. So when Kamala Harris says, oh, we'll stop them from buying homes in bulk, I'm like, okay, there's the loophole. And so they're going to use that loophole. And besides which, it's not going to pass. Wall Street owns the government. So there's no way corporate Republicans and Democrats, which are about 98% of politicians, are going to limit private equity. And so when do we ever get a little bit of change? When Democrats are in charge, they do 5 to 15% of their agenda. And that's not because they're warm-hearted. It's a release valve, right? Oh, see, under Obama, we got about 5% change. And what was that? That was Obamacare, right? That was most of the change that we got. And what's the greatest part of Obamacare? And now a lot of right wing also agree, almost all of right wing agree about this portion, which is they got rid of a bias against pre-existing conditions. Why did they do that particularly? because the country was about to get in a fucking rage. We all have pre-existing conditions. If you deny me when I'm sick, what the fuck's the point of insurance, right? And the anger had gotten to a nuclear level. So they're like, release valve, get rid of pre-existing conditions. Let's go back to just milking them regularly. And oh, by the way, put in a mandate so that they have to buy it from us, right? Do you know who originally came up with Obamacare? The Heritage Foundation. It was their proposal. Romney did it in Massachusetts. It was called Romney Care. So I think this is a super important election, but I've earned the credibility to be able to say that because in 2012, I said this is a largely unimportant election. Mitt Romney and Barack Obama's policies on economic issues are near identical. Obamacare was literally Romney Care. Right now, the left says, oh, the Heritage Foundation, it's so dangerous, Project 2025. Well, brother, they're the ones who wrote Obamacare. and you say that's the greatest change in the world, right? So that's why the Democrats, yeah, I'll take the 10% change overall. I think Biden did about 15%, but Obama did 5%. But they'll also march you backwards by deregulating like Clinton did and Obama did. The bank bailouts like Obama did. But 10% is better than 0%, but it's not to help you. It's the release valve so the system keeps going.
Is it possible to steelman the case that that not all politicians are corporatists, or maybe how would you approach that? For example, this podcast has a bunch of sponsors, and I give zero fucks about what they think about what I'm saying. Like they have zero control over me. Maybe you could say that's because it's not a lot of money, or maybe I'm a unique person or something like this. But I just think it's possible to have, and I would like to believe a lot of politicians are this way, that they have ideas, and while they take money, they kind of see it as a game that, you accept the money, kind of go to certain parties, hug people and so on, but it doesn't actually fundamentally compromise your integrity on issues you actually care about.
I could steelman almost anything. I could steelman Trump. I could steelman conservatives easily, right? Corporate politicians is a hard one. So first, it's not all politicians. We can start out nice and easy. Tom Massey, now Hawley and Gates not taking corporate PAC money. Bernie, the squad, they don't take corporate PAC money. You could disagree on either end of those folks on social issues, but generally they are 1,000 times less corrupt. They're more honest. And part of the reason you might hate the squad is because they're so honest. Mm-hmm. They tell you their real opinion on social issues that you really disagree with. A lot of the corporate politicians won't do that because they're trying to get as many votes as possible so they can fillet their donors when they get into office and do all their favors for them. Okay, but you see I'm already falling apart on the steelmanning of corporate politicians.
Let's zoom in on that. So if you take corporate PAC money, that's it. You're corrupted. Can you imagine yourself, say you're a politician, you're for president, you're a human being, you're a person with integrity, you're a person who thinks about the world. You're saying if I was a corporate PAC and I gave you $1 billion, you'd be, I could tell you anything.
So Lex, everything is a spectrum. Humanity is a spectrum. So can you find outliers who could take corporate PAC money and still be principled enough to resist its lure? Yeah. And I would hope that I would be a person like that, but I wouldn't take corporate PAC money. But if you force me to, I think I would still stay principled and do it. Could you find 10, 20 other people in the country? Yeah. But on average, that is not what will happen. What will happen is they will take the money and do exactly as they are told.
See, I think most people have integrity. Okay, hold on. So what I'm more worried about is when you take corporate PAC money, it's not that you are immediately sold, it's over time.
Over time, that's true.
So yeah, I get it. But I wonder if the integrity that I think most people have can withstand the gradual slippery slope of the effect of corporate money. Which if what I'm saying is true, that most people have integrity, one of the ways to solve the effect of corporate money is term limits, because it takes time to corrupt people. You can't buy them immediately, and then the term limits can for the listener. Cenk is shaking his head. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
No, so look, you're right that over time it gets way worse. And as we talked about earlier, Biden's a great example of that. Comes in anti-corruption, winds up being totally pro-corruption by the end. But he was also here for almost all of it, as we started in a world that was not run by money in politics and is now completely run by money in politics. So does it get worse over time? Kristen Sinema in Arizona is a great example of that. Comes in as a progressive, doesn't want to take PAC money, cares about the average person, etc. Over time, she becomes the biggest corporatist in the Senate, and a total disaster. But if you say that the majority of politicians I don't know if this is what you're saying. Majority of politicians have integrity.
No, let's start at the majority of human beings.
Human beings.
I think that politicians are not a special group of like sociopaths.
I think they are.
They lean a little bit towards that direction, but they're not like only sociopaths go into politics. It's like you have to have some sociopathic qualities, I think, to go into politics, but they're not complete sociopaths. I think they do have integrity because sometimes for very selfish reasons. It's not all about money. Even for a selfish person, for a narcissist, it's also about being recognized for having had positive impact on the world.
Yeah, I get it. But all right, so let's break it down. So first, human beings, then we'll get to politicians. Do human beings have integrity? Well, it's a spectrum. So some people have enormous integrity. Some people have no integrity. So there is not one type or character, right? So some people have a ton of empathy for other human beings, and they literally feel it. Like, I feel the pain of someone else. And I'm not alone. Most people feel the pain of someone else. If you see on video a baby being hurt, an overwhelming majority of human beings will go, no, right? You have empathy. That's a natural feeling that you have. Some people have no empathy because they're on the extreme end of the spectrum. Serial killers and Donald Trump. Okay. And so I'm partly joking, but not really. He has never demonstrated any empathy that I have ever seen for any other human being. I'm going to trigger some right wingers because they think every terrible thing he said is out of context or joking or not real or fake news. But his chief of staff didn't make it up. He called people who went into the military suckers and losers. Why? Why did he say that? If just hang with me for a second, don't have your head explode, okay? And I'm not saying to Lex, I'm saying to the right wingers out there, right? So the reason is because if you're like Trump and you literally don't feel the empathy, you think, why the hell would I go in the military, get killed for someone else? What a sucker. No, I'm going to stay out of the military. I'm going to stay alive. I'm going to make a ton of money, and I'm going to look out for myself. And he assumes, because everybody does this, you assume that everyone thinks like you do, but they don't. So Trump assumes everybody's as much of a dirtbag as he is, and because he doesn't feel it, he doesn't feel the empathy. And so he's like, yeah, you'd be an idiot, a sucker and a loser to go into the military and have sacrifice for other people. So you see the spectrum. Even if you think Trump's not on that end and you think I'm wrong about that, you get that there are people on that end, right? So you have a spectrum of integrity, empathy, etc. That's what I would call your hardware. You layer on top of that your software, okay? And the software is cultural influences. Your parents, media, your friends, all these are cultural influences. So now, when you're in certain industries, they value more integrity. So religious leaders, if you're doing it right, which is also very rare, right? But if you're doing it right, you're supposed to have empathy for the poor, the needy, the whole flock, right? So that profession is incentivizing you towards empathy and integrity, okay? And even then, a giant amount of people abuse it, right? But okay, good. In politics, it creates incentives for the opposite, no integrity. And that software, to your point, over time gets stronger and stronger and stronger until it takes over. Now, you might have someone with a lot of integrity like Tom Massey, right? A Republican from Kentucky. And whether I agree with him or disagree with him on policy, I get that the brother is actually doing it based on principles. And there isn't any amount of money you can give Tom Massey for him to change his principles. Why? He's on the principled end of the spectrum as a human being, right? So is Bernie. They're on the same part of that spectrum, right? But for most people, the great majority of the spectrum, if you overload them with software that incentivizes them to not have integrity, they will succumb. And now let's switch to politicians in particular. Why do I think that they're, on average, far more likely to be on the sociopathic part of the spectrum? Because of the incentives and disincentives. So this changes every congressional cycle. And when Justice Democrats were winning a lot, it got all the way down to 87.5%. But on average, for congressional elections, the person with more money wins 95% of the time. It doesn't matter if they're a liberal or conservative, Republican or Democrat, or any ideology they have. 95%. Okay. So now let's say you got the 5% that went in that are not hooked on the money. Well, they're going to get a primary challenge. Then they're going to get a general election challenge. And 95% of the time, the one with more money wins. So eventually, this system cycles through until almost only the corrupt are left.
Wait, hold on a second. Is that real?
That is real.
95%. So if you have more money, 95% of the time you win, huh?
Yes.
I like to believe that's less the case for example, for higher you get.
Yes, that's true. You're right.
Yeah.
So you know why? So the presidential race is ironically, in some ways, the least corrupt. So let's dive into why. If you're running a local race anywhere in the country, you're going to get almost no press coverage, meaning a congressional race, right? If you're running a Senate race in the middle of Montana, you're going to get almost no media coverage. So that's where your money in politics has the most effect, because then you could just buy the airwaves. You outspend the other guy, you get all the ads, plus you get the friendly media coverage because you just bought a couple of $1 million of ads in the middle of Montana. So the local news loves you, the TV stations, the radio stations, the papers. So some of the papers are principled. They might say, oh no, but overall, they're not calling you a radical. They're not calling you anything. And you're buying those races. But when you get to the presidential race, that's much harder, because presidential race, you have earned media, free media that overwhelms paid media. Perfect example is 2016. Hillary Clinton outraces Trump by about 2-1, but she loses anyway. Why? Because Trump got almost twice as much earned media as she did. And the earned media is better. It's inside the content, right? It is definitely better. So in a presidential election, as long as you got past the primary, you could actually win with not that much money. And that's part of the reason why I have hope, Lex, because all you got to do is get past a Republican or Democratic primary. And now that's very, very, very difficult, but Trump did it, right? Now, he took it in the wrong direction, but he did leave a blueprint for how to do it. And so once you get to the general election, you're off to the races. You could do any goddamn thing you like, okay? You could be super popular. You don't have to give a shit about the donors. You can get into office. You could bully your own party and the other party into doing what you want, and you can get everything done. You could even get money out of politics. So don't lose hope. I mean, we even started Operation Hope at TYT, and our first project was to knock Biden out. And everybody said, you guys are nuts. That's totally impossible. And we knocked Biden out. Right? Did we do it alone? Of course not. We were a small part of it, right? But we laid the groundwork for hope. And we laid the groundwork for when he flopped in the debate, people had already been told, remember, he's bad, he's old, he's not right. And the debate proved it. If we hadn't done that groundwork, and not just Young Turks, obviously, but Axelrod and Carville and Nate Silver and Ezra Klein, etc., Charlemagne the God, Jon Stewart, all these people helped a lot, so that when the debate happened, it confirmed the idea that out there that he was too old and couldn't do it. So my point is, hope is, if you lose hope, you're done for. Then they're definitely going to win, right? Hope is the most dangerous thing in the world for the elites. So whether you're right wing or left wing, I need you to have hope, and I need you to understand it's not misplaced. We just got to get past the primary, and we're going to turn this whole thing around.
So you basically a presidential candidate who's a populist who in part runs on getting money out of politics.